Hey, we're going to record class. Today is Friday the 13th. Nothing creepy here. The advanced class, so if you're a regular kid, do not watch this video. Stop now, go back, because this is not a story you want. You want to get to the other story, which is making a lot more sense to you. For here, wearing red and blue, go you. Desk drawing, just don't scribble on your desk. It's annoying me. Don't write inappropriate things. I have to be mean to people. Quiz coming up on Monday. We're going to talk about in a moment. This was the homework I just gave you credit for. Some of you guys are going to fix it and then show it to me later so I can still give you points to make things a little bit easier. Bell work, don't forget to do that one. You're going to be picking up your notebook and grading these in just about 2 weeks. Homework. This is what's connected to the quiz coming up on Monday. I got done writing your quiz during second period today. Your quiz is 12 questions, half multiple choice, half fill in the blank, or the short answer ones. And so it's going to cover 3 topics. You're going to have some questions that come from the after 20 years. So I think 2 questions come from Black Cat, and I think 2 questions come from the nonfiction article about robot teachers. Most of it comes from after 20 years. The story you have to read all on your own, and then just 2 from the Black Cat from there. The after 20 year story, again, is on there. If you're looking at the homework on the website, you just scroll down, and it's literally right there. Or on the button that says homework, if you go to the button to the right next to the story homework number 1, is a button that says, read this story for the quiz in giant letters. And you can click that button, and up comes up the after 20 years. If you want a copy of the story, you are going to need to print it yourself, and then you can use it on this quiz. If you don't print it, then you don't get to use it. I may have some copies you can borrow, but you're going to have to give me an iPad or a shoe to borrow them. If you don't want to borrow my copies, then you're going to have your own copies. If you do option 1, you get to use it on the quiz. So if you've done option 1, you get to get your notebook out and you get to use it on the quiz. Plus, some of the questions up there are on the quiz because I wrote my own quiz and I wrote my own homework and I'm human and I'm lazy. So it was easy for me just to take some of those same questions and use them on both. So just to give you a heads up, you can use that same thing for you if you want. Do not forget to read the story, because if you show up on Monday and go, I didn't read that story, were we supposed to? And I go, no, you're fine. You'll go, okay. And I hand you the quiz and you go, I don't know any of this. I go, yes, I know. It's okay. It's because you're dumb. And so right now is your choice to avoid being dumb in the future. Questions now, aside from Mr. Broviak, am I dumb? Because I won't know that till Monday. Yeah. Then the only thing you need out is our story about the Black Cat. Oh, by the way, there is the copy of After 20 Years, just so you see the story. That's the entire story. I tried to give you a fun one that has a nice, fun twist ending. There's a little bit that was going to require you thinking in the story. I will answer questions before the quiz if you have them. You just have to ask me. Foreshadowing. What is foreshadowing in a story? Casper?
Clues for the ending.
That works for me. Clues in the story that tell you what's going to happen. Now, with Black Cat, we've already had some clues. It'll make a lot more sense as we get towards the end of it. Let's go with, what point of view is our story being told in so far?
First person.
First person. So what is our main character's name?
We don't know.
We have no idea because he's not said his name. Here's a hint. We never find out his name. He never tells us the entire story. It's just some dude. So we're going to refer to him as some dude. So, some drunk dude. So some dude throughout the entire story. When he was a kid, what kind of personality did he have? Loved animals, super friendly. And then he marries a wife. And what kind of personality does his wife have? Loves animals. And then he starts making a poor choice. What's his poor choice? Starts drinking and alcohol and having issues from there. What kind of drunk is he? Some people are happy drunks, like, I love everybody, give me hugs. And he's like, I want to stab you. You're like, and you run from him. So he's not happy drunk, unless you just think like death and destruction is happy, then that's why we have therapy. And so he's probably not the happiest drunk. One day he comes home, Cat runs from him. He grabs Cat, says, don't you run from me. And then how does Cat react? So how does he react to Cat biting him? He teaches the cat a lesson, and that's when he goes, doinky, and out comes the cat's eye, and now there's a one-eyed cat. And he feels really bad about it and gives up drinking and decides to never go down that path again. That would be not true. That would be a happy story, and that is not the story we're reading yet. There's happy stuff coming later on. We just have to go through some unhappy parts first. Then we get to the part where he says that human nature, and what does he say is a big part of human nature? Doing things you're not supposed to. Hashtag being a teenager. And so he says that's just a big part of human nature, doing things you're not supposed to. And then he does a thing he knows he's not supposed to do.
Kill the
How does he kill the cat?
He
He goes and takes a noose, wraps it around the cat, and then throws it around a tree, and then hangs it from there with tears coming down his eyes because he knows it is a bad thing to do, and he does it anyway because that's the kind of person he is. Now, we are on our regular roller coaster of upping, downing, a little up, a big down, and now we get to start going back up again. Casper?
You make that?
I did not. I Googled it. I am not a noose maker. Nooses are actually really hard to make them correct.
It looks like you made it yourself.
No.
Because it's a picture.
It is, yeah, just a Google noose. We are on the right-hand side. He just got done making his really poor choice, and it says, on the night of the day on which this cruel deed. So that same day he does this thing, something is going to happen. Ooh, before I forget, at the very beginning of the story, we find out something is going to happen to him tomorrow.
He's gonna die.
Keep that in mind, that he knows he is going to die tomorrow. So something is going to happen that's going to tell us that he knows he dies tomorrow. On the night of the day on which this cruel deed was done, I was aroused from sleep by the cry of fire. The curtains of my bed were in flames. The whole house was blazing. It was with great difficulty that my wife, a servant, and myself made our escape from the inferno. The destruction was complete. My entire worldly wealth was swallowed up, and I resigned myself from then on to despair. What happened to his house?
It burned.
Burned to the ground. The same day he hangs the cat, his house burns down. I am above the weakness of seeking to establish a sequence of cause and effect between the disaster and the crime. I'm detailing a chain of facts and wish not to leave even a possible link imperfect. On the day after the fire, I visited the ruins of my house. The walls, with one exception, had all fallen in. This exception was found with a closet wall, not very thick, which stood in about the middle of the house, and against which had rested the head of my bed. The plaster had resisted the destruction of the fire, a fact which I attributed to its having been recently spread. Around this wall, a dense crowd of people was collected. Many of them seemed to be examining a particular portion of it with very eager attention. The words strange, extraordinary, and other similar expressions grabbed my curiosity. I approached and saw, as if imprinted upon the white surface, the figure of a gigantic cat. The impression was done with an accuracy that was truly marvelous. There was even a rope around the animal's neck. When I first beheld this ghostly sign, for I could scarcely regard it as less, my wonder and my terror were extreme. The cat, I finally remembered, had been hung in a garden adjacent to the house. Upon the alarm of fire, this garden had been immediately filled by the crowd of people, and someone must have cut the animal from the tree and thrown it through the open window into my bedroom. This had probably been done with the idea of waking me from sleep. The falling of other walls had smashed the victim of my cruelty into the substance of the freshly spread plaster, the chemicals of which, with the flames and the ammonia from the carcass, had then accomplished the image as I saw it. Quick timeout. Once again, Poe gets a little dense. So he goes back to the house the next day. The whole house is burnt to the ground except for one thing. What's still up?
A wall.
One single wall. And when he sees this wall, he's like, weird, one wall's still there. But there's a crowd of people around the wall, all staring at it. Because what's going on with this one wall? Yeah, when they say an impression, it's like an outline of a cat. So you have a wall, and there's an outline of a cat on the wall. Just like random outline of cat. But not just a cat. What else is there?
A noose.
Outline of a noose around the cat. And he's like, that's certainly kind of weird. But he comes up with a perfectly normal explanation. He's like, well, obviously there's a reason why this happened. And his perfectly normal explanation is, obviously, someone was walking by during the nighttime, saw the house on fire. and went, "Oh my God, this house is on fire. If only there was a way of alerting all the people on the inside of it. If only there was a cat hanging from a tree." Look, a cat hanging from a tree. And the person obviously then cut down the cat from the tree, swung it around their head several times, as you do with a cat in a noose, threw it through the window, thinking, this will let the people know that their house is on fire. The cat hit the wall, stuck there. Another wall fell, smashed the cat, melting it completely, and it disappeared, leaving nothing but an outline. And his thinking is, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And so his thought is, that is why there's the outline of a cat with a noose on there, because that's what people do when a house is on fire. You throw a cat through the window. Been there myself several times. Ooh, by the way, with his wife, what was the one thing she thought about the cat, by the way? About what? Just mentioning random things. All right. Oh, by the way, this next part is one of my favorite lines of the whole story. Although I had found a logical explanation for what I had seen, classic, it did not fail to make a deep impression upon my imagination. For months, I could not rid myself of the specter of the cat. And during this period, there came back into my soul a half feeling that seemed close to, but was not quite, remorse. I went so far as to regret the loss of the animal, and to look around me among the dreadful place in which I now frequently visited for another pet of the same species, and of somewhat similar appearance with which to replace it. So he feels a little bad, has a little bit of sadness in him. So how does he decide to fix the sadness? He's going to find another cat. He's like, that's what you do if someone throws a cat through the window to save your life, and you feel bad about hanging the cat and stabbing it in the eye. You go out and get a new cat. Roller coaster. One night, as I sat, half stupefied, in a local bar, my attention was suddenly drawn to some black object resting upon the head of one of the immense barrels of gin, or of rum, which was the main furniture of the place. I've been looking steadily at the top of this barrel for some time, and what now surprised me was the fact that I had not sooner noticed the object there. I approached it and touched it with my hand. It was a black cat, a very large one, nearly as large as Pluto, and closely resembling him in every aspect but one. Pluto had not a white hair upon any part of his body, but this cat had a large splotch of white covering nearly the whole region of its chest. Upon my touching him, he immediately arose, purred loudly, rubbed against my hand, and appeared delighted with my attention. This, then, was the very creature of which I was in search. I at once offered to purchase it off the bartender, but he made no claim to it, knew nothing of it, had never seen it before. I continued to pet it, and when I prepared to go home, the animal seemed to want to follow me. I allowed it to do so, occasionally stooping and patting it as I went. When it reached the house, it made itself quite comfortable at once, and immediately became a great favorite with my wife. So what's he find?
A black cat.
A new kitty cat. But this new kitty cat is a little bit different. And what makes this cat different?
There's a white splotch on his
So
chest.
right in the middle of him, bloop, he's got just a giant white spot separating him from old cat. Kim?
Now I know why my dad said that there was a cat that had a white spot, and I didn't know.
Don't worry. There's more coming still. No.
But wait.
But wait. There's more. I continued to pet it, and when I prepared to go home, the animal seemed to want to follow me. I allowed it to do so, occasionally stooping and patting it as I went. When it reached the house, it made itself quite comfortable at once, and immediately became a great favorite with my wife. For my own part, I soon found a dislike to it arising within me. This was just the opposite of what I had anticipated, but I know not how or why it was, I became disgusted by its evident fondness of me. By slow degrees, these feelings of disgust and annoyance rose into the bitterness of hatred. I avoided the creature, a certain sense of shame and the remembrance of my former deed of cruelty preventing me from physically abusing it. I did not, for some weeks, strike or otherwise violently abuse it, but gradually, very gradually, I came to look upon it with unimaginable loathing and to flee silently from its revolting presence as from the breath of a plague. How does Speaker feel about Kitty?
Hates it.
He hates it already. The exact opposite of what he expected. Now, as he has Kitty Cat and follows him around, he hates the cat. What added, no doubt, to my hatred of the beast was the discovery, on the morning after I brought it home, that, like Pluto, it had also lost one of its eyes. This circumstance, however, only endeared it to my wife, who possessed that feeling towards animals which had once been my distinguishing trait, and the source of many of my simplest and purest pleasures. And eyeball, wink, gone. With my hatred for this cat, however, its attraction towards me seemed to increase. It followed my footsteps with an insistence that would be difficult to make the reader comprehend. Whenever I sat, it would crouch beneath my chair, or spring upon my knees, covering me with its loathsome purring. If I arose to walk, it would get between my feet and thus nearly trip me up, or fastening its long and sharp claws in my clothes, climb in this manner to my chest. At such times, although I wanted to destroy it with a single blow, I was still stopped from doing so, partly by a memory of my former crime, but chiefly, let me confess it at once, by my absolute fright of the beast. So again, cat's driving him insane. He feels this cat. He starts hating it more and more. In this next paragraph, you're going to get a hint where he's telling you this story from. Another hint about why he's going to die tomorrow. This dread was not exactly a dread of physical evil, and yet I should be at a loss how otherwise to define it. I am almost ashamed to own, yes, even in my current felon cell, I am ashamed to own that the terror and horror with which the animal inspired me have been heightened to a level it would be almost impossible to think of. So where is he telling you the story from? Jail. So he's telling you the story in jail, and what happens to him tomorrow?
He dies.
Now we get to find out why. Top of roller coaster, tuk, 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 tuk. By the way, wife has been really patient, forgiving throughout all of this, but cat has been driving him nuts. The cat keeps loving him, cat keeps purring, he can't handle cat anymore. My wife had called my attention more than once to the shape of the mark of white hair, which was the only visible difference between the strange beast and the one I had destroyed. The reader will remember that this mark, although large, had been originally quite indefinite, but by slow degrees nearly unnoticeable, and which for a long time my brain struggled to reject as simply imagination, its outline had taken on a more definite shape. It was now the depiction of an object that I shudder to name, and for this above all I loathed and dreaded and would have rid myself of the monster had I dare. It was now, I say, the image of a hideous, of a ghastly thing, of the gallows. O mournful and terrible engine of horror and crime, of agony and death. If you don't know what the gallows are, they are connected to a game many of you play as a kid, where you get to make little blanks on a piece of paper, and then you draw a thing, and people try to guess what word it is. And what is that thing you draw? That is the gallows. So they're saying this cat now has a white mark on his chest, which is not a random blotch, but over time has shifted to look like this right in the middle of the cat's chest. Why does that freak him out? Amblin?
Because he hung the cat.
Because he hung the cat. So now this... Oh, wait a minute. Wrong cat. So now this cat has a vision of the thing that he used to kill the last cat, and it loves him and follows him around nonstop, and he is starting to lose his grasp of sanity. Beneath the pressures of torment such as these, the frail remains of the good that was within me gave way. Evil thoughts became my only comforts, the darkest and most evil of thoughts. The moodiness of my usual attitude increased into hatred of all living things and of all mankind, and my uncomplaining wife was the most usual and the most patient of sufferers of these outbursts. His wife is a wonderful person. One day, she accompanied me upon some household errand into the basement of the old building which our poverty forced us to live in. The cat followed me down the steep stairs, and nearly tripping me, infuriated me into my madness. Lifting a nearby axe and forgetting in my wrath the childish dread which had so far stopped me, I aimed a blow at the animal, which would have proved instantly fatal had it gone as I wished. But the blow was stopped by the hand of my wife. Aggravated by the interference into a blinding rage, I withdrew my arm from her grasp and buried the axe in her brain. She fell dead upon the spot without even a groan.
That's why it's in jail.
But wait, he has to get caught first.
Oh.
This hideous murder accomplished, I set about the task of concealing the body. You know, as you do. I knew that I could not remove it from the house, either by day or by night, without the risk of being seen by the neighbors. Many ideas entered my mind. At one period, I thought of cutting the corpse into tiny pieces and destroying them by fire, as you do. At another, I resolved to dig a grave for it in the floor of the basement. Then I hit upon what I considered a far better method. I determined to wall it up in the cellar, as the monks of the Middle Ages are thought to have walled up their victims. For a purpose such as this, the basement was well tailored. Its walls were loosely constructed, and had lately been plastered throughout with a rough plaster, which the constant dampness of the basement had prevented from hardening. Moreover, in one of the walls was a hollow area, caused by a false chimney or fireplace that had been filled up, and made to resemble the rest of the basement. I made no doubt that I could readily remove the bricks in this part, insert her corpse, and then wall the whole up as before, so that no eye could detect anything suspicious. And in this calculation, I was not wrong. With a crowbar, I easily dislodged the bricks, and having carefully placed the body against the inner wall, I propped it in that position, while, with little trouble, I relaid the bricks and wall as it had originally stood. Having bought mortar, sand, and hair, I prepared a new plaster, which could not be distinguished from the old, and with this I very carefully went over my fresh brickwork. When I had finished, I felt sure that it was perfect. The wall did not have the slightest appearance of having been broken. The rubbish on the floor was picked up with care. I looked around triumphantly and said to myself, here at least then my work has not been in vain. So, Barry's wife in wall, covers wall with bricks, with new plaster. She's now completely gone. No way anyone can catch him. He's home free. Except that's where you have to read the end of the story on your own. I don't get to read it with you. You get to find out what happens. And once again, I can almost guarantee you, whatever you think it is that's going to happen to him, you are wrong. Monday, we have a quiz. Saturday and Sunday, you have nightmares. Good luck.